Hello, I'm Amir Teymuri. I'm a composer of computer music and electroacoustic music, currently working and residing in the city of Freiburg in Germany. On the invitation of the Floating Sound Gallery Vienna, I'm very excited to be performing a selection of my compositions on May 13th at the Kulturverein Vronihof in Vienna. The program includes works of mine from the last 10 years, along with the premiere of a fresh and new composition and also talks around the pieces. Although I will discuss the pieces in much more depth and detail during the concert, I would like to provide a brief overview of the program for those of you who are hopefully planning to attend the concert in Vienna. In this talk, I will focus on the longer pieces of the program, as there are also a few shorter works that I'm going to perform and which I compose occasionally when I need a break from larger projects. I will touch on these shorter pieces during the concert, but will concentrate on the other works for now. I would like to go through the pieces in chronological order, starting with a composition from 2014 titled Kinderlied. This piece is rooted in the tradition of language compositions, as it consists solely of recorded whispered text material. Kinderlied, which translates to children's song, is 25 minutes long and also the longest piece of the evening. It is in a way a very puristic and conceptual work of electroacoustic music. My intention here was to create a language piece using only the very basic early tape music techniques in a digital environment of computer, of course, such as cutting, splicing, and simultaneous playback of different sections of the recording. In Kinderlied, I experimented with how very simple techniques like overlapping layers of whispered language, which in this case is the German language, can alter our perception of the language and transform the character of the language within itself. The piece begins with a recognizable text whispered and gradually evolves into pure abstract sound, all while remaining within the realm of language, so there is deliberately no digital transformations of sound involved in this composition. I created this piece while I was studying at the Studio of Electronic Music at the University of Music in Freiburg. In the concert, I will also present three pieces that result from my recent work and research on creating transitional musical structures and transformations of sound sequences. My focus in these pieces has not been on metamorphosing a single sound within itself, but rather on transforming one sequence of sounds into another, potentially very different one. To illustrate this concept in simpler musical terms, I aim to transform as smoothly as possible one melody into a second melody over an arbitrary number of steps. To create these works, I initially developed a number of heuristical algorithms inspired mainly by computer graph morphing techniques such as the famous feature-based image metamorphosis by Thaddeus Bayer. These attempts at creating strategies were just good enough to work with. They were not perfect, but got me into the fever of finding possible solutions to my questions regarding creating what I would like to label as transitional music. The first approach I developed led to a series of 5 small pieces which served initially as studies of the working with the technique for myself, but I liked the results very much at the end, so I kept some of them and gave them the title 5 Changes, which we will hear in the concert. Each piece in this collection of 5 changes features a rather very simple structure. It begins with a sequence of synthetic sounds and transforms gradually into another very differently sounding sequence by the end, comprising a linear transformation between the two sound gestures. Later, I came upon an algorithm which was originally developed for speech recognition called dynamic time warping. It was developed in the late 70s by two Japanese scientists Hiroaki Sakue and Saibi Chiba at the research laboratories of the Nippon Electric Company, short NEC as we know it today. This algorithm takes two different sequences of data, which could be any arbitrary data like data we can use for describing a sound, and manipulates the second sequence on its time level to make it as similar as possible to the first one. For this, it also looks up to find most similar data points between the two sequences. I used a slightly modified version of this technique to create interpolations between the initial and terminal sequences, which however often required manual refinement afterwards to achieve a smooth final result as I intended. In the concert, we will hear two pieces composed using this technique. One is still a work in progress. It is composed of multiple movements titled Transition Studies. In the concert, I will perform the first two movements of this piece, and the other composition, making its premiere at the concert, is titled Warping Time in Search of Similarity, referencing my use of the dynamic time warping algorithm by Sakue and Chiba. Another work I will perform on May 30 is a movement from a collection of pieces called Void Plenitude, which also is a work in progress. The pieces in this collection are structurally very much bound together, as they are all created using the very same piece of code, but each movement in the result has its own sounding landscape and characteristics very different from other movements. My idea here was to develop a collection of pieces that share a common architecture while producing distinct sounding results. To create this piece, I developed a digital instrument that allows me to control various parameters I defined while I was performing. I then recorded my performances and selected the ones I liked best as the final result. The movement I'm going to perform at the concert is based on a very short recording of a bass clarinet multiphonic tremolo that I recorded many years ago during a rehearsal with a bass clarinetist. The fundamental concept is to generate a wealth of music from a very minimal core of resources, thus creating plenitude from void. I hope this short introduction could give you a basic overview of the concert program, and I look very much forward to seeing you in Vienna.